Again, welcome to Monday Analysis. Again, we got a new video, man. A lot of stuff been happening. By the way, you see, what I'm saying? So let's jump into this today. So today we're talking about South Sudan economy. I like my South Sudan brothers, what I'm saying? I got a lot of them, tall as hell, what I'm saying? So today we're going to be talking about the economy. I want you to get a little bit of a view, 360 view of South Sudan economy. It's the newest country in Africa right now. So a lot of stuff are happening, too much opportunity right there. So let's see what we can talk about today, Monday Analysis. All right, so we're going to talk about a few stuff. We're going to discuss about productivity of South Sudan. We're going to talk about people, South Sudan people that are like 7-8 feet tall. We're going to talk about their politics. We're going to discuss more about ease of doing business in South Sudan. And we're going to close on where you can actually invest and make some money. So we're going to look into the gaps in the market, where there's a gap in the market and where you can actually start thinking about moving in. So this video is made for any entrepreneur or a South Sudan person or businessman or anybody who's actually interested in investing in South Sudan or want to learn more about South Sudan. So let's get it. So South Sudan geographically, I would say, is more like the east and central of Africa, right? And also is a landlocked country, so which means it touches no oceans. So they have to import everything through other countries like probably Tanzania or Eritrea, Djibouti port, or Mombasa, Kenya. So it's a landlocked country. That's one of the disadvantage, right? So also can be an advantage if you are somebody in a business of importing goods from overseas, right? So the other thing is the language they speak about. The national language is English and also Arabic. I know one of my boy from South Sudan, New York. Bro, this guy was crazy, man. He did a lot of shit. So I will go back to that story later on. Make sure you stay with me and make sure you subscribe and hit the notification bell for every Monday we dropping Monday analysis about economy or sectors or industry. So the next thing is the colonial history or the colonial power of South Sudan. I will actually say that there's no colonial power because South Sudan got independent itself from this North Sudan. So that's why they got independent. But you can say South Sudan, before it got independent, it was colonized by British, before it was just Sudan, right? So what is the population of South Sudan? This is one of the most surprising data I actually found about South Sudan because, I always see a lot of South Sudanese, in America especially, online. And they used to think like these people, they gotta be a lot, But the funny thing is it's only 11 million people. And population-wise, they rank number 7 in East Africa. So they're the least populated country in East Africa community. So the president of South Sudan is Salva Kiir. Bro, that name sounds very scary. Salva Kiir, Imagine somebody say, my name is Salva Kiir. Bro, you better run, bro. Because this guy, he does not sound good for you, right? All right, so let's go. One of my favorite part about any economy I like to do is productivity, to look into what they produce, what they import, where there's a gaps, and where can we feel as entrepreneurs, especially African entrepreneurs, So there's this misconception that there's no opportunities in Africa. And you see a lot of African kids move to United States and move to Europe to look for opportunities, right? But you see a reverse whereby white people and European people and Chinese, Indian, they're moving to Africa to find opportunities. So I always wonder why is African people leaving and the foreign people coming, So we're going to look into some gaps. I want to help you find some gaps in the market. If you live in South Sudan or you want to do business in South Sudan or you live in East Africa, you can actually see something you can go and do and profit off South Sudan. So let's go back to productivity. South Sudan productivity, if you look about the GDP, is about $12 billion. And I want you to pay attention on this number, The GDP is $12 billion. If you look at it, is ranked number 5th in East Africa community, right? But look at their GDP per capita. The GDP per capita, it puts them at the number 3. So people in South Sudan earns more money than people in Uganda, than people in Rwanda, than people in Congo, than people in Burundi. The only country which I have the best GDP per capita than South Sudan is Tanzania and Kenya. So I want you to look to understand that. So they have a small country. They have about 11 million people. The GDP is $12 billion, and the GDP per capita is $1,071, and that's the third in East Africa. So That one you have to pay attention to that. So number 2, let's go on export product. What does South Sudan export to the world? What does South Sudan sell to the world? So this indication right here, I can give you an idea if you are an entrepreneur of number 1, what can you produce and what can you sell? This gives an idea of what does the country has as a raw material, and maybe you can start thinking about how to add a value to those products they're exporting as raw. So the export product is the crude oil. Probably everybody expected that they're gonna sell some crude oil. Crude oil is unrefined oil. So basically you dig the oil and you sell it. And the crude oil, they're making about $455 million. And then they're selling some refined oil. It looks like they have a really, really small refineries. They're only refining $85 million. And then they're doing forage crops, a little bit of $10 million. That's really small. And then they're exporting onions. Actually, you know what I'm saying? I never thought about a country would export onions. But they're only doing about $2.1 million. And then they're exporting meat. So this is poultry meat, like, chickens and all kind of stuff. So it's about $12 million. So if you look at this, South Sudan is more like a desert country, right? But they're actually able to export some agriculture product, you know what I mean? So like onions, forage crops, and also meat. So I would say that these people, they look to be a little bit more productive and also actually use the efficiency with their resources when they're producing products. So now let's look into the import. Import is very important because it shows you how much money the country is already spending bringing the product in a country. So you need to ask yourself a questions. Can I produce that product in South Sudan cheaper? Or can I produce this product in Uganda and sell it in South Sudan? Or can I produce this product in Kenya and ship it in South Sudan? Maybe you're going to save them some money if they're importing from China or India. So the import product of South Sudan is actually very, sad, I would say, because they import some product which is not really of a value, For example, they're importing trucks. I don't know what they're doing trucks with, maybe using for the military wars, some shit. But, I've never had a country that is importing just trucks. It's like the same things I saw last time. Actually, this is a very funny story, right? There's this guy from Texas, and he had a plumbing company, and they had a truck, so, he used for his plumbing business. So he took these trucks back to the dealership, because he was going to trade in to get a new one. So when he gave the truck to the dealership, after 2 years, he's sitting home watching a TV, watching CNN. And guess what he saw? He saw his trucks in the Middle East being driven by ISIS, bro. You know what I'm saying? And his logo still on the truck. Yo, they didn't remove the logo. He's already his truck with his logo on the truck and with ISIS, and they have already put a machine gun on the top of the truck. You know what I mean? So he went and sued the dealership, and the dealership gave us a couple $1 million for that. Anyway, so they're importing trucks, about $61 million a year. They're importing cars. These people, they like to ball big time. About $50 million a year, but they're importing sorghum. This thing right here, actually, I was very surprised that a country can import this product. This product is actually used to make some beers, some traditional beers and stuff. And they're spending about $26 million. And they're importing medicine heavily, spending about $21 million. For all the video we have done so far, you can see there's a lot of countries that are spending millions of dollars importing medicine from overseas. So this should be a good indication for anybody who is a scientist or you are into medical school. Maybe you should start doing some research. Maybe go take some Maasai people out there and take their medicine and do some research on the medicines. You may probably get better medicine than what we buy from overseas, you know what I mean? So the money is actually the most expensive money in East Africa right now. They call it South Sudan pound. The inflation is very horrible. It's at 28%. So if you bring your money to South Sudan, make sure you don't change it to the local currency because it's going to lose a value, almost a quarter of the value every year. So keep your money in your other currencies like Kenya shillings or USD or euros or pound. You know what I mean? So you don't lose the value of your money because the money is losing value very fast. So that thing you have to look at is interest rates. Interest rates in South Sudan is a little bit high. The highest probably so far is about 12%. So that means if you start a business in South Sudan and you put your money in a bank and you want to go borrow more money from the bank, you're going to pay about 12% interest rates. So let's say you borrow about $1 million from the bank. That means you're going to be paying about $112,000 every year. So you better make sure your money has the business you're doing is going to be making more than 10% profit margin. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to make any money. All your money is going to be eaten away by the interest rate. All right, so let's talk about that thing which is very, very important, which is people. South Sudan people, I like them people, bro. You know what I'm saying? Those guys are like 8 feet tall, you know what I mean? 8 feet, 7 feet tall. One of my favorite basketball player, Bobo, you know what I'm saying, South Sudan, tall. You know what I'm saying? That guy has a real bit of consistency, bro. That guy tried to be drafted like 4 or 5 times, and they didn't draft him. Almost to the 5th time he got drafted. You know what I mean? So he didn't give up. He kept going, and now he's in the NBA, right? So what is the unemployment rate of South Sudan? The employment rate of South Sudan right now is about 19.9%. I don't know. I have never been to South Sudan, but I don't know if the number is correct or wrong. So if it's wrong, please make sure you go ahead and leave the comment, correct me on those numbers, because what I have found is most countries are actually not really giving the right numbers on unemployment rates. So now let's look at the cost of living. One thing I know about South Sudan is very hard to live over there, and it's very expensive to live down there. A lot of stuff have to be imported in our country, so you have to be prepared for that. So the cost of living in South Sudan, your house, you're going to be paying about $400 a month for rent. The food is going to cost you about $195 a month. Transportation is going to be about $110. You're going to spend about $45 buying energy every month. So the total cost of living right here, it's about almost $1,000 a month, you know what I mean? And if you live in a country where the GDP per capita is $1,000 per year, and then you're spending $1,000 a month, I don't think it makes a little bit of sense, but hey, that's the numbers they give us, right? So let's look at the life expectancy. So I have to understand that South Sudan has been in a war for a really, really long time. And, ever since they got independent, there have been 2 guys just keep fighting over who want to be the president, who want to rule. And this thing has caused a lot of death to a lot of South Sudan people and pushed people into refugee camps and stuff. Okay, so if you look about their life expectancy right now is about 55 years old, the lowest in East Africa, because you got Tanzania 66 years old, Kenya has 63. So South Sudan is pretty much the lowest. So a man in South Sudan is expected to live only 55 years old. So I don't know if it's because of the war or because of the alcohol. So one of them has to be the reason why people are dying so fast, But the average age is 19 years old. So every kid right now is about 19 years old. So this number can be sometimes tell you something very important, also can tell you something very sad. For example, if everybody in a country, the average age is 19, it may be because people are not growing older, they're dying faster. Maybe they're being pushed in a wall and then they just get killed, So kids, as soon as they hit 20 years old, they put them in the military and they die. So also it can be like, okay, there's people that are still young. But you have to be always very careful. When the country is in a war and the people that are very young, the numbers can mean that people are not really making it out alive. They're just pushing them to a war and get killed. So the education rate is pretty low. Only the number you can find is about high school. People who have this high school degree is about 5%. We say that's really, really pretty low. One of my friends actually from South Sudan, there's a really very famous story called The Lost Boys of South Sudan. It's really a very famous story. If you live in America, probably you know this. There's a movie about it. So one of my friends, he was one of those boys. His name is Choma Jack. So I remember I met him I think a couple years ago, 2019, and he was running for the U.S. He was running for a councilman in New York, Central New York. So I helped him out. He won. He won the seat. Right now he's a councilman in Syracuse. And he's right now the next year going to be running for the Senate, for the state Senate. So good luck for him too. So the labor market in South Sudan, they have no minimum wage. Means you can pay somebody even whatever you want, whatever you think is correct. Minimum wage sometimes can be a bad thing, right? So I'm gonna give you an example. If you live in a poor country, let's say South Sudan or Uganda, and then a government put a minimum wage. Government put a minimum wage to the companies, right? So what's going to happen is it's going to be very hard to produce any product because you have to pay people a certain amount of money. And in that case, the neighbor country has no minimum wage. So you're really going to be at disadvantage because the companies are going to be more likely to go to the neighbors instead of doing business in your country. So let's look at the political system of South Sudan. Pretty depressing, you know what I mean? I don't know. The political system of South Sudan right now, I call it unclear because nobody knows the president. Even if they say Salva Kiir, but this guy, they just fight every day, man. They just wake up in the morning and they say, hey, bro, we're going for a war today. And then the next week they say, hey, we reached the peace deal. Then the next month again, hey, we're going for a war. So, you know what I mean? It's been like that for a really long time. And I don't know what's going to happen. But I know South Sudan, with the help of East Africa community, we're going to get some solution for that country, because I love them South Sudan people, man. So the conflict history of South Sudan has been a war ever since they got independent. To this day, they haven't got really peace for a minute. And there's a lot of people in the camps, like in Kenyan camps, Tanzania camps, Ugandan camps, all those people that are from South Sudan. It's pretty sad, man. These people cannot go back to their country because two guys in South Sudan, they decide to just fight every day, man. Sad. So the safety of South Sudan is not really that great, It's not that great. So the corruption index is pretty bad. It's ranked as the most corrupt country in East Africa, 13 out of 100 score, which means 0, the most corrupt, 100, the least corrupt. And that's scoring 13 out of 100, man. It's very sad. And South Sudan is actually a very rich country in natural resources. They have a lot of oil. They have a lot of, I think they have even gold. And they have a lot of stuff, but they can't really sit down and build, since they have two guys over there who just keep fighting each other every day. So now let's see the ease of doing business in South Sudan. You know what I mean? So if you're going to go to do business in any country, you have to look at a few stuff, right? You have to look at taxes. You have to look at the energy prices. You have to look at the property rights. You have to look at the office space. And those are some few stuff you need to look into before you actually decide to do business in that country. So South Sudan has the highest corporate tax at 35%, compared to Kenya, which is 30%, Uganda is 30%, and Tanzania is 30%. So South Sudan so far has the highest corporate tax. So which means if you start a business in South Sudan and you make $1,000, you're going to pay $350 to the government as a taxes. So I don't know what's going to be your profit margin, but you have to be careful with those numbers. So the energy prices in South Sudan is the cheapest in the regions. You're going to pay the cheapest rates in all East African countries, about 0.44 cents per kilowatt per hour, which is going to be great in terms of production. So you can also compare like the taxes of 35%, and also compare the, for example, Kenya has the highest, the most expensive energy bill. So they may be charging you 30% on taxes, but the energy bill may be very expensive to that, to the point where you can pay 35% in South Sudan and pay the less energy and still make more money than in Kenya. So it depends with the industry you want to do. If you're not going to manufacturing, you're going to need a lot of energy. So you may as well choose a country with the cheapest energy possible. So now the property rights in South Sudan is you cannot buy land, or the land is owned by the South Sudanese people under the government custody. So the land is only belong to the people of South Sudan. So you may probably lease the land from the government and may be able to build a factory or build something. But right now, is the property rights is nobody can actually own the land except the people of South Sudan. So the office space right now is about $8 per square meter, which is pretty much one of the cheapest in the region as well. So overall, doing business in South Sudan is not really that expensive, but the only thing you have to look at is the government taxes, because the government is gonna need their money. You know what I mean? When you send them, I'm gonna tell you something about Tanzania, bro. When you send money on mobile money, right? So you send your friend money, right? Do you know your friend has to pay taxes to get the money out, bro? I never seen any country where you send someone money and the government needed taxes on transaction. You know what I'm saying? Like if you send money anywhere else, the only person who's going to pay taxes is the company which is transmitting the money. But in Tanzania, government take taxes of money transmissions. Crazy, wild, man. So let's go to the last piece, which is I like the most, is where to invest. So when you're going to analyze where to invest your money in South Sudan, we have to pay attention on the imports, because that's why we're going to see some opportunities in terms of like where you can invest. Also the export, right? So South Sudan right now, probably the best place you're going to invest. I don't think agriculture is going to be the best space, because most of the country is desert. You should be looking into oil. So the oil can be like investing in the refineries or investing in a byproduct of oils. Also, you may look into like importing food in South Sudan. Maybe buy food from Uganda and sell them in South Sudan. That's maybe a good business. It looks like they don't have a good land. They cannot grow any stuff. and so they import all the food. You should be looking into what food can I take from Kenya or Uganda or Tanzania, sell them to South Sudan. So the other thing you need to look into is the medicine. You know, they're importing a lot of medicines as well. People die in a war, so people are getting shot every day. You may need to look into medicines. Maybe you can import them from other countries and sell them to the South Sudan, or you can create them in South Sudan and, you know, manufacture them there. So there's always opening space to do stuff like that, you know. So I agree. Also, the other thing I heard about South Sudan is the water is very, very, very expensive. You know, the water bottle is expensive than actual soda. So you may look into, you know, processing the water is not really that expensive, but maybe they don't have enough wells to dig the water from to process. So you may look into maybe importing the water from the other East African members countries and go sell them in South Sudan. Also, you have to remember there's no taxes on cross-border trades with the East African members. So the market is really open for you. If you're an entrepreneur in Uganda, Kenya, Tanzania, or Rwanda, you may start looking into like, how can I get in South Sudan and sell my product in there? What do they need? And what can I get from there? So you should start looking into that. And in conclusion, the most money can be made through import and export, importing stuff in the country than producing stuff in that country, because the minimum wage is not there, but it looks like it may be expensive. You have higher corporate taxes over there, and as well, the only thing you have is a cheaper energy bill, but you don't really have a good land either. There's no water, so you should start looking into importing stuff in South Sudan, producing in Kenya, Uganda, Tanzania, and sell in South Sudan. All right, man, so we're going to be closing today, and thank you again for spending time with me. So I'm going to see you next Monday, and make sure to subscribe too. I'm out.